Welcome to day 4 of our study of Nehemiah and the law of what? Navigation. So as you remember, the law of navigation says anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. So we've been looking at Nehemiah and what an outstanding leader he was during his time. And it really is just amazing to think of how he put it all together. And as we get to the end, and tomorrow we'll come back on it, the way it all concluded with the wall being finished in 52 days that had been dormant for 120 years. It really does boggle the mind to consider that. So for today, our leadership thought is that leaders not only know where they're going, we've shared that before, but today the focus will be that they also take people with them. So leadership is never meant to be a solo flight, but it's always around the concept that we take others with us. As someone once said, and I've shared this before, he that thinks he leadeth and has no one following is only taking a walk. So suggesting that there's got to be other people involved. We can't just be leading ourselves. And so today we're going to really dive more deeply into this process of what Nehemiah did to get from when he heard the report from his brother and the others who came to Jerusalem, and what transpired to get them to the end. So by way of introduction, it's one thing to have a vision for a project. It's always good to start there. It's another to rally an entire city to undertake the task, especially given the fact that there were threats, there was opposition, probably some hunger, and going to a place you've never been before in your whole life. Yet that's what Nehemiah did. The walls of Jerusalem were rebuilt because of Nehemiah's ability to work with people and to lead them where they needed to go. If you look at the process of rebuilding, you can see that he practiced the following principles that we'll first list, as we always do, and then jump into them more deeply. And so we're going to look at several principles, if you will, of Nehemiah's, how he organized people and brought them together for a common good. So these things are: 1, simplification; 2, participation; 3, delegation; 4, motivation; 5, preparation; 6, cooperation; and then 7, and very important to not forget this, celebration. So we'll go through all these TION words one at a time, so you don't have to try to remember them right now. But let's talk about this issue of simplification. Nehemiah really just boils it down to one thing: we must rebuild this wall. Doesn't get much simpler and clearer than that, especially when people can plainly see that the wall has been there in rubble. It's basically been a heap of rubble for all this time. People could immediately identify with the thought, well, maybe the time is finally here that we do something about this. And so how important it is for a vision to be clear, yes, but also simple, so that people can really grasp it, so they don't have to wonder, well, what is it that you're trying to lead us to? So with Nehemiah, he kept it very simple. We must rebuild this wall. And so that leads us to participation. Nehemiah was certainly not going to do that himself. He was going to need the help of many people to get the job done. And so just a couple of statements in regard to participation. First, that he included as many people as possible in the process. And then he moved forward with those who showed the most potential. That kind of sounds like common sense, doesn't it? Include as many as you can, but really invest heavily into those that show great potential. And then he organized the workers very strategically, because he did it by family relationships. It wasn't haphazard, but he organized by families so that people would know each other and be able to work together. And we're gonna see in just a little bit how he went even more strategically than just the fact that people were family members. So from participation, we move on to delegation. Now, in the story, you remember that Nehemiah and the workers were constantly bombarded by threats externally, threats to destroy them, et cetera, et cetera. And so Nehemiah prepared himself for that. And so he ended up dividing the workers in half. So half of them did the work, and the other half guarded the workers to make sure that any attack would be dispelled, really. And so he prepared in advance for that possibility. Again, just part of the brilliance of his strategy. Even external threats, he had a plan for it. And you could see where he had thought it through and had the discipline to have people standing guard so that the workers wouldn't have to worry about doing that themselves, so they could keep focused on what they had to do. And now motivation. Nehemiah was absolutely a phenomenal motivator. He reminded the people why they were fighting, including what was at stake. And then, even more brilliantly, we said earlier that he aligned people according to families, but he stationed them right in front of their own houses. Do you think they needed any more motivation to defend their family and their homes? What a strategic move. So what he did was he understood what their inner motivation was and what was really important to them, and made sure to align what he knew was important with what they knew was important. And he never had to give them pep talks, because they were highly motivated to defend their family and to defend their homes. That's pretty impressive. Next, we move on to the principle of preparation. Preparation, of course, is, in the broader sense, is the key to this law of navigation, of instilling confidence in people, is that they get a sense that you not only know where you want to go, but how you're going to get there. We've talked about that. So in terms of preparation, Nehemiah anticipated opposition. He knew it was coming, and he developed a plan to counter it. He was prepared if the neighbors did attack the workers and guards. More importantly, he kept a trumpet player. If you go into the story, he kept a trumpet player right by his side. And what was the significance of that? If there was any danger or any even natural problem, the trumpet player would blow the trumpet, people would hear that trumpet and go rushing right to where the need was. And so here again, he deals with crisis management in a sense by getting out in front of the crisis before it even starts. And he says to the people, if there's a crisis, which means the trumpet blows, you come together right there where the crisis is so we can deal with it. Again, can you just see his mind just turning and thinking through these contingencies and being prepared all along the way? That's very impressive. From preparation, we move on to cooperation. Nehemiah created a culture of cooperation among the people. There was an incident where the wealthy people had actually started the practice of usury, uh, basically charging really, really high interest rates to fellow Israelites. That was, of course, causing relational issues and causing them not to want to work with each other because they didn't trust each other. And so he got after these nobles, these rich people, and demanded that they return what they had taken from the people at large. And he was so forceful about it that every one of them agreed to do it because they realized how significant it was that they had to work together. And so Nehemiah took that bull by the horns. So that takes care of all but the last one, celebration. When you go into the story, they had an enormous, enormous celebration after it was all said and done. And how important it is when you're doing even small projects, but let alone a big, huge one, and you really have it all come together and it ends up successfully. It's important to celebrate that success with everyone that helped make it possible. So he didn't just go on to the very next item on his agenda. He didn't just say, okay, that's done, move on. But he took time to celebrate those victories. And I have no doubt that had any of us been there that day, what a phenomenal celebration that must have been to see that last brick go into the wall and 120 years of, in a sense, a curse is all reversed. And the sign, of course, with the Israelites being known as the people of God and how that played into it all as well. So they all pulled together. They dealt with all the dangers, the hunger, all of these things that could have pulled them apart. Nehemiah took care of those contingencies, and they had a tremendous celebration to conclude it all. So, by way of conclusion today, no great task is accomplished without both people to work and a leader to guide them. They both play their individual roles, and when they come together, that's when things succeed. And when there is a convergence of the opportunity of the moment, the need of the people, the purpose of the leader, and the calling of God, even the impossible becomes possible. And so with that, that takes us to our final segment for today, our question for reflection. And it simply says, whom are you gathering for your leadership journey? Who are you taking with you? I don't know about you, but to me, going on vacation by myself doesn't sound too much fun. I don't know that I've ever done it. Don't want to. How much more on a leadership journey? It's got to be more than one. And so think about, and if you haven't been conscious about this, think about who you might want to take on your leadership journey with you. Give it some thought. See if names of people begin to bubble up. Thank you once again for being with us. We look forward to wrapping up the study of Nehemiah and the law of navigation tomorrow at 1:30. Don't forget, Fridays at 1:30 and not 3:30. And we're looking forward to sharing that final study and moving on to the next one on the list. And so we'll be excited about that as well. For now, we just wish you well and pray God's blessing on everything you do. Amen. God bless you.